We're going to get started with the pledge. And we'll get started with the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 2018-2019. School is officially open. Welcomed 2009 or so, give or take, students yesterday. That's in district and out of district. And very happy to see the hallways come alive again. Certainly over the last couple of weeks that's been happening as some of our athletes at the high school have been coming in, and certainly staff in the three schools as they began to prepare their classrooms. But it really came alive yesterday when those buses rolled in and we saw the little ones come to the elementary, the middles come to the middle, and the young adults come to the high school. So it's a very exciting time for us here, and really love seeing the hallways full again. As the board knows, I'm going to be making a request to adjust the student calendar, and that'll be on the next meeting. There were some questions regarding what the changes would be, and there was a delay in really coming down with some final recommendations because of new regulations on how a calendar year is calculated with state ed. You still have to meet the 180-day requirement, but you also have to meet a minimum number of hours requirement. So we've really nailed that down as far as our ability to comply, and we comply very well. One of the members of the Board of Regents explained it to me that they had to add in the hours requirement because there was a vastly different length of school day around the state. So for example, you could have a school district like ours that has a relatively long 6 to 6.5 hours, depending upon which building and which day, school day. And then you have some districts that might have as little as 5 hours in a school day. So that difference, if you count just by days, well, they're all the same. We all had a 180-day minimum requirement. But if you really look at hours, those hours add up. When we have an hour more instruction a day, over the whole year, that adds up to a lot of instructional time. So that's our situation. We do have plenty of instructional time. We will meet the hour requirement with no problem. What we didn't do when we originally proposed the calendars, we didn't put any spring superintendent's conference days in. And traditionally, we had been having 2 superintendent's conference days in the spring to work on scoring. And now that we're using computer-based testing, we can't score in-house, so we have a scoring company that helps us with that process where our teachers cannot. So we really only need one, we're going to propose to go back to traditional spring, which is 1 superintendent's conference day in the springtime, which is purely for staff development. It really is a good time of the school year for us to spend some time reflecting back on how things went from the year. The school report card is fully out by then. Winter's kind of cleared itself out to some extent. Just to give you a sense of numbers also, the last 3 years, we've had 4 superintendent's conference days during the school year, 2 in the fall and then 2 in the spring. So I'm proposing for the 18-19 school year to have 3 superintendent's conference days. So it'll be 1 additional instructional day, 1 less superintendent's conference day. Also, the difference from the 17-18 to the 18-19 calendar, the 17-18 calendar had 186 days in it. The 18-19 calendar has 187 days in it. So also Robin prepared a little bit to talk about some specific plans that we would use the March Superintendent's Conference Day for if the board approves that at our next board meeting. So Robin's got some prepared remarks, and questions can be asked and answered.
So after meeting with the principals, we discussed how we would use that day. And at that point in March, we're just coming off our midterm assessments, our STAR assessments, our F&P assessments, all the assessments given to benchmark our students mid-year. So that day would be used to look at all that data and see where we have to move forward, because now the state assessments come April 1st. So that gives us a small window to make adjustments in instruction. As well, we have a social studies initiative this year, of which prior to that March 1st date, there are 15 workshops that are available to our K-12 teachers to prepare us for our new assessments coming in the next 2 years, the transition social studies test. So that would also be another point where we could stop after those 15 workshops and then come back together, group together departments, and start sharing those resources, materials, and assessments, and see, where we are at that point, refocus, because we're moving at such a fast pace. People are going to workshops in small groups. This would bring us back to a large collective audience, as well as the literacy coaching that we're going to be doing and some of the new math strategies that we're going to be implementing as of November 6th. So that just gives us a halfway point to just recollect ourselves and refocus.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
So again, a major highlight for us is that we are adding one instructional day to the calendar overall, going from 186 to 187, which is what is already in the adopted calendar. But we're only proposing to go to 3 superintendent's conference days instead of the 4. So thank you. I'll have that on the next agenda so that the board can consider it and make a decision on what they want to do. Also, for the September Student of the Month, there's a request because of a couple of schedules going in a lot of different directions for people that want to present Students of the Month at the September meeting to move September into October. So if there's no objection with the board, I'd like to do September and October Students of the Month in the October meeting, if that's okay. There's some people that really have some ownership to the students that are receiving it for September and can't make the meeting on the 20th, so I think that's kind of a special.
We're gonna split them, do some the first, some the second, I don't know.
Oh, we could do that.
Depending on what the workload,
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's a lot of parents. And
That's
people
not a bad
come.
idea. Yeah, we could do that. We could take a look at it. Yep. So that's a very good
I know we
idea.
had a presentation to one night too,
Yeah.
and, yeah,
First meeting, maybe we could do the September one, and then the second meeting, we could do the October one.
then we get caught up.
Okay, all right, good idea. Thank you. Also, I know that the board is anxiously awaiting our 3/8 assessment results and our Regents exam results. I'm expecting to give to you preliminary results and some longitudinal looks at what those results mean for us in district. As I had said before, unfortunately, the state has still embargoed the data for public consumption, so we can't present anything publicly, and that also means that we don't have other districts' results for comparative purposes. So we don't really know where we are in the tide, so to speak, but we'll get those numbers out to you so that we can begin that dialogue. We are certainly crunching under the hood on those numbers fully, so the buildings have them for placement purposes and for really chewing into what does this mean for our instructional practices. At a high level, we look at it, where are we as far as our performance goes from year to year. So we'll get those out to the board in a report pretty soon. Also, brief discussion was had regarding some consultancy services that we're looking for administratively. As you know, we have an attorney group that we consult with all the time. We have several other small consultancies that we can work with, mostly through our BOCES connections, when there's stuff going on that we need some guidance on. Pat actually contracts with a number of consultant services regarding some of the financial planning that we do. One area that we're a little short in is engineering and architectural support. So there are many times that things come up that Larry Cavazza or Pat Witherow need some guidance on, because this pipe structure needs to get rerouted. And rather than guessing at it, or rather than spending the time coming back to this group, approving a short-term contract, issuing a purchase order up that, it's very inefficient. We'd like to issue an RFP, and we're in the process of developing that RFP, a request for proposals for an architectural and engineering firm that would become more or less a firm of record. They would be our firm for consultant purposes, but also that firm would help us with work that this board is planning on doing this fall and winter in looking at our building condition survey and assuring that we're taking care of our physical assets, and the services of an engineer and architect will help answer specific questions and help guide us as we start to engineer, no pun intended, what we should or shouldn't accomplish and the timeline that we are going to work on those elements. So I'm just announcing to the public and the board, we are working on that RFP. Pat and I are tentatively planning on getting that out on the street for review from engineering and architectural firms within the next 2 weeks, so we can hopefully have something to the board as a recommendation for consideration either early or at the latest, late October. So that's in preparation for the work we're going to do later on this fall and this winter on building condition survey.
And that one is strictly a time and materials, there's no retainer.
Correct.
And stuff, right?
Correct, yeah. We wouldn't be looking, this isn't a bidding on a specific project. It's more of a professional services contract, so we would anticipate that the bids coming back, and that's what we're defining in the bid document, would really identify hourly rates. So, yep. And the last, Mike has a very quick update on where we are with the Smart Schools Bond Act. Parents in the middle and high school have been getting some calls home and some information home, and certainly tonight was a big night for our juniors and seniors with rolling out Chromebooks in the one-to-one initiative. Very proud that we're able to say that we have, by the middle of September, 7 through 12 will all have their own Chromebook in their hands, working on a daily basis, bringing those devices into classes. Sixth grade will be very quickly behind that. So, Mike, maybe you want to give a little update on where we are also with the Smart Schools Bond Act.
So our application has 3 components to it. It's classroom technologies, high-tech security devices, and network infrastructure. And really, when we first proposed that, it was we really wanted to stay close to a 50-50 split with classroom technologies and both the security and the network infrastructure. But what we found is over the past year and a half, we've been consistently rolling out grade levels of Chromebooks. And in that time, we've had some issues with our network infrastructure, and we've talked about our high-tech security. So our surveillance system is aged, and we know that we want to put in additional cameras. So over the course of time, we've talked about putting out more cameras. We also talked about when there's an incident, we want to record multiple angles of an incident. Now, you already have high-def cameras out there, and the space that it takes up is very large. So when we looked at our servers that are constantly recording these things, we can really only get to 30 days for each camera, but there are some cameras where we want a longer recording length, and it does create complications. So in reevaluating for our latest Smarter Schools bond submittal, we made some adjustments, and the adjustments were to network infrastructure and to some of the high-tech security features, so some new servers, some new licensing, and that made the split change to about a 60-40 split, where you have network infrastructure and high-tech security features gaining those percentages, and classroom technologies decreased a little bit. But it is a natural decrease because we have been continually investing in our Chromebooks for classes, and actually this year we hope to reach the height where all students in grades 6 through 12 have those Chromebooks. So that was an adjustment made when we finalized our latest Smarter Schools bond submittal, which was August 2nd, we resubmitted.
Thank you. Any questions on any of that? Last thing, I want to welcome Elizabeth Goodenough, our student representative tonight. Welcome to the board. Also Matthew Jackson. Elizabeth and Matthew are going to be going back and forth. We have one rep each meeting, and Elizabeth and Matthew will be sharing those responsibilities. I really enjoyed our time together today, too. I think we kicked off on a great note, so I'm looking forward to the year with the two of you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Move on to public comment on the agenda items. Does anybody have any public comment on the agenda items?
Joanne Reed, Newburgh. I just have a question on the personnel agenda that you're coming up to. I noticed that they're hiring a new social worker. Is that for the one that left, or are we adding another one to?
We have a vacancy at the
Yes.
elementary school, and that's filling. Actually, this is just reestablishing a new start date, but
Right.
it's a fill for an existing position.
Right. And the other one is the special ed teacher. Are we hiring a new teacher, or is it a replacement?
That one is the Is that there's a few that we had this year, so that one is probationary position that is from a retirement, or is that the,
There's one position, that's the additional position because of the increased numbers
correct?
at the middle school.
Yes, which is we'll say the name, Erin Pontes, is the full-time probationary new position because of increased enrollment. The .5 is the creation of a position for a similar reason at the middle school. Elementary school. Thanks,
I was
Rose.
gonna
We
say
had
it's
a
at
lot
the
of
elementary.
transactions in the special ed in the last 2 weeks, so.
So would it be another way of looking at it to like start looking at restructuring our special ed department? I've said this before in the past, and maybe looking at the ways to give different services to our students, and how we are giving special ed, even with our social workers and how their responsibilities are given. So
Yeah, I mean,
I've asked that before in the past, and I've never gotten an answer on it. And,
well, it's been brought
so-
in, and to meet the legally required numbers and matches, we had to
I
create
understand
the
that, Frank, but
position.
my thing is, are we doing it because we have classrooms that we have special ed kids that are not balanced correctly, some of them. Some of them you have like the life skills class, and you have kids going for diplomas that basically shouldn't be in the same classrooms because you
Well,
have behavior issues and you have non-behavior issues.
In the
And
opin-
it's
in the
being,
opinion of the district's administrators, this was the makeup we need to best serve the students of the district.
Again, my argument will be with you is, are you looking at each classroom to make
Always.
sure that in other words, if you're in a self-contained classroom, those are the kids that are diploma bound,
We always look for the
you
most
know?
efficient way.
And to make sure that their
We always look
behaviors
for
are
the
not
most
holding
efficient
up.
way that we can use district resources and meet students' IEP needs. It's a very careful balance, a very important one for us, so the answer is yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure because, like I said, behavior issues shouldn't be in with Regents diploma children. It just makes it harder. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the agenda? Okay, move on to consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. Personnel recommendations, textbook adoption, oil carting service contract, Board of Education minutes for 8:23 and 8:28. Can I get a motion? Susan, second. James, any discussion?
Just a quick question, Mike, on the personnel. Just a verification. Linda DeStefano, advisor, grade 8. That's a resignation only for the advisor position, right? Not her regular
Correct.
teaching
She has
position.
transferred to the high school,
Okay.
so felt it was wise for her not to serve in the previously appointed position of
Okay.
8th grade advisor.
Right. Okay, makes sense. I just wanted to verify that's what it meant. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, cast your votes.
Teresa, if you could cast me as a yes, please.
James.
Yep. Mike came right over from the Chromebook rollout tonight, so apologize not having everybody's machine set up. But how many did you put out tonight, Mike? Good.
Very good. Tony's? Okay. Okay. You want, yep.
I know she can't be with us here tonight, but I do want to publicly say that we just hired Erin Pontes from LaGrangeville. She has certifications in childhood childhood education grades 1 through 6, and students with disabilities grades 1 through 6, and literacy birth through 6. She graduated from SUNY New Paltz with a bachelor's in childhood education and a master's in literacy education from SUNY New Paltz. And Erin is joining us at the elementary school. Welcome to Erin.
Okay, on to old business, the board goals discussion. Everybody has had a chance to review them. We got a couple comments back. Everybody should have seen John and Susan's comments. So we're going to try and take Does anybody have anything further from that?
In addition, so one of my comments was I felt that it was probably pertinent that we look at constructing a goal that includes mental health. I don't know if we want to be looking at the combination of safety, security, and mental health, but I found it interesting that in the on board, I think it was Hamburg Central School District, they're training all of their staff in mental health first aid, and it just gave, you know, a firsthand account of not only teachers, but additional staff. It just gave them some real eye-opening things to look for, feeling as though, you know, they're more involved and have opportunity to engage with different behaviors that they see or report them. And so with that being said, maybe it's something that we perhaps should not only verbalize and prioritize, but make a goal.
Yeah, I think we could probably look to lump that together and work them in there. And I know, I didn't get to stay for the whole part, but I know at the opening day, they did a whole hour's training for all district employees specifically on that on Tuesday. I don't know if you
Yeah, I
wanna
saw
talk about
the,
Mike.
Yeah, I spent a decent amount of time as a theme from my perspective on relationships, care for each other, care for our children, care for our community, and kindness certainly was a big piece of that. And woven through that theme, as I spoke, was mental health. I mean, that really is a big piece of it. And then we had Tom Calaga, one of our school psychologists, do a formal presentation on things to look for. And it was very nuts and bolts. I was quite impressed with it. He's got a wonderful way about him, instant credibility with the staff. So really walking through what a professional or any of our support staff may encounter. Here's what you might see, and here's what to do about it in our system. So that's really kind of a kickoff to a broader theme of a required mental health curriculum that Rose and Robin have been working on with our building principals, and will be a continuing theme in our professional development work this year. So it weaves perfectly into where we are as a system administratively also. So.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll take all of those, we'll try and reword them and get them together and get them out to everybody so we can review them and be ready to finalize them hopefully at the next board meeting. Any new business? Any other business?
Yes, also too, I read that the NISBA listed all of the areas that will be attending the annual conference, and Marlboro was not listed, so I put it out to the board. I believe it's October, and hopefully...
I'm going down to the pre-law conference, but not
yeah.
for the full convention.
And I went to the summer law conference, so
I
don't know if anyone else is interested, you New York City folks.
Yeah, it's moved again this year.
October 25th, I think.
If there's any interest, just let Teresa and I know so we can get you registered.
In New York
It's a simple thing to do, but I'm going down. There's a couple of wonderful topics on the pre-law conference that I wanted to grab, so I'll spend the day down there for that. Well, the pre-law conference is Thursday, and then the convention is the following couple of days. Correct.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
in New York
last
City.
year was up in last couple of years it was up in Buffalo. Now it's back down New York City.
Okay. We'll go back to Mike for a second.
So, I'd like to introduce someone to you. Erin Pontes from LaGrangeville. Erin has just been appointed. Oh, I'm sorry, Amanda. I don't have your bio sheet with me. I'm sorry, Amanda. Amanda. Amanda is coming on as our new social worker, and we are very excited about it. I announced you last time because we appointed you last time quickly. Remember I said I couldn't, but I did, yes. So Amanda, we are very excited that we adjusted your start date tonight to the 17th, so we're all set for you. We're so excited to have you there. I'm glad you were there on opening day with our staff. Finish up strong with what you're finishing up now, and we are so excited to have you at our elementary school to fill in a very important spot for us. So.
I'm very excited.
It's
I'm
all
very
good.
honored to be part of the team.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome to Marlboro.
Any other items? Okay. Recognition of district residents. Any other items?
Again, Joanne Reed Newberg. I have two things. One, I know we talked about, I missed last meeting, about the vote and moving it to Superintendent's Day to vote, because I have to tell you, that day here, it was horrific between the storm and trying to find a place, because you have to be within 500 feet of the voting polls. There was really no place to go. I ended up upstairs. I don't know where Mr. Malazzo or Mr. Maron ended up, but the parking was horrible. Handicap parking was horrible. So again, I'm going to ask to move it back to the middle of the district where it originally was, and make that a Superintendent's Day. And I think it makes it all even for everybody in the district to get to, and that's why it was put there to begin with, because it used to be just for a couple of hours a day, and through the years of me fighting, we started it at 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and we put it in the elementary. We did agree to move it here because it was a safety issue for children, but knowing that that was the Superintendent's Day and the children were not in the school, it really would have been better to place it in Marbell Elementary. So that's one of my things. My second one is all our booster clubs, we ask for a financial status on them every month. We allow nonprofits. We do not have a policy on nonprofits on who's running them, who's on their board, but we're allowing them to be put on school property. So I am asking for the board to come up with a policy to find out who their board of members are, who their CFOs are, and basically a financial report, because it does support our children. And we ask all the other booster clubs to do that. And I believe we should be doing that to protect our children, to find out who is on there, because again, it becomes a safety issue if we don't know who's on those boards.
Okay, we can review the policy and see where it's at.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's it.
Hello, Ron Moorhead. I was wondering if the school board or the Marlboro School District is putting together or considering any type of morning or after-school programs for children to be dropped off early and picked up late for working parents.
Is that the elementary school?
Correct.
There is
K
one
through
now.
5.
Yeah, we have one now.
After-school program?
Yes.
And that's drop-off, pickup at what time?
You know what? I'm going to actually, what time is it?
6, and the drop-off in the morning? Fantastic.
But the elementary school has all the information about the Y-Scoop program. It's through the Y.
Simple enough, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Moorhead, if I may, I'll comment on that. My daughter actually attends the Y program. They do a fantastic job. She comes over at home every day. Homework is done. She's happy. There's a lot of kids for her to play with, so it's a pretty good program.
Is that program in-house, though? Are they being transferred from school?
It is done in the, I believe it's the K through 2 cafeteria.
Mr. Walters.
Two questions. One, I notice in the minutes that you just approved that there were 2 meetings in August. I only knew of one. Was there a second meeting, the 23rd and 28th?
Yeah, there was a special meeting because of the issue, and it was posted, less than 24 hours notice, but it was posted because Town of Newburgh had a little hiccup with to our favor this time, so we wanted to get it done right. So we had to readjust and readopt the tax warrant.
All right, so I'm not crazy. There was a second meeting.
Yeah, it was the second meeting.
The other is, in the past, I've always received my school tax bill on September 1st. I received it today on the 6th, which now doesn't give me or other taxpayers the 30 days that it's interest-free. Is there a problem with the mailing of them? And is there any way that the penalty-free portion can be extended for 5 or 6 days?
I'll address the first part. Again, because we found a problem, they stopped printing the tax bills, corrected them, printed the tax bills, and then mailed them, and you had a holiday weekend. I'll leave Pat on the question of the tax report.
Taxes are due and payable on the 1st, regardless of whether you receive a bill or not. So your interest-free period is just for the month of September. If you had come in, they would have been able to look the bill up for you and print you out a copy, and you were able to pay it.
Okay. I will tell you what the post office told me why that the mailings got into my P.O. box today, that the school district doesn't have the correct addresses to mail the tax bills. That came directly from the post office.
Any other district residents to be recognized? Okay, we have no executive session tonight, so motion to adjourn?